You never think it'll be your hot tub that starts a war. You never think a few jets and warm water could unravel the quiet illusion of peace you bought into when you signed the HOA papers. But in Meadow Ridge Heights, where lawns are regulation green and fences can't be taller than your neighbor's patience, the wrong structure in the wrong yard can bring out something darker. My name's Ethan Hale. I didn't come here to fight anyone. I came here to heal, to raise my daughter, to find silence. But when a woman named Celeste decided my peace was against the rules, well, that's when everything changed. When Ethan Hale moved to Meadow Ridge Heights, Oregon, he wasn't looking for perfection. He was looking for peace. The community promised both: tidy lawns, friendly neighbors, and a sense of order he thought would be good for his daughter Lily. After losing his wife to cancer 2 years earlier, Ethan had learned that grief was messy. He needed somewhere that wasn't. For a while, it worked. Their new house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, shaded by tall pines. Lily, 8 years old, and still a little too thin from months of hospital cafeteria food, had her own bedroom with a bay window overlooking a little patch of woods. Ethan worked remotely, designed a home office filled with light, and planted lavender along the back fence. And then there was the hot tub. It wasn't a flashy one. No neon lights or blaring speakers, just a simple, cedar-wrapped tub with a retractable cover. He placed it carefully in the backyard, tucked into a private nook bordered by the fence. It was, more than anything, for Lily. She loved the water. It soothed her nightmares, the phantom aches she sometimes whispered about when she thought Ethan couldn't hear. The day it was installed, she dipped her toes in, giggled, and said, "It's like we have our own tiny ocean, Dad." It was the first time Ethan had seen her smile without forcing it. He thought, maybe, they were finally healing. He hadn't counted on Celeste Warrington. She arrived on his porch a week later. A woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair, pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to lift the corners of her mouth into a permanent scowl. She wore a Meadow Ridge Heights HOA badge around her neck, carried a clipboard, and radiated the kind of authority that didn't invite conversation. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice crisp. "I'm here regarding the non-compliant structure recently added to your property." Ethan blinked. "Non-compliant? Are you talking about the hot tub?" "I got all the permits from the city." Celeste's lips thinned. City permits are irrelevant to community standards. As per Meadow Ridge Heights Bylaw 6.4b, all external additions must first be reviewed and approved by the HOA Architectural Committee. Ethan shifted, feeling the first prick of annoyance. "I wasn't aware of that. The realtor didn't mention it's the homeowner's responsibility to educate themselves." Her eyes flickered past him, toward the backyard as if she could already see the offending object. "You're subject to a $150 daily fine until the structure is removed or retroactively approved." Ethan inhaled slowly. "Can I submit for approval now?" "The next committee review is in 6 months, Celeste said coolly. "Until then, fines will accrue. Removal is advised." She handed him a printed violation notice and turned sharply on her heel. "No, welcome to the neighborhood. No, I'm sorry for your loss," which he knew some of his neighbors had whispered about behind hedges, and at block parties he hadn't been ready to attend. Just a fine and a warning. Ethan closed the door and leaned against it for a long minute. He wasn't angry yet, just tired. Tired, in a way he couldn't quite shake. The kind that lived deep in his bones and made every little injustice feel heavier. When Lily bounded into the room with wet hair and asked, "Can we go in the hot tub again tonight?" he forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart." For now, the backyard was still theirs. But something inside Ethan stirred, a quiet, coiled tension that had nothing to do with city permits or HOA bylaws. It had everything to do with not letting anyone, especially not a woman like Celeste Warrington, take away the small, fragile piece of happiness he and Lily had rebuilt. Not again. Not ever. 2 weeks passed. The fines arrived every Monday like clockwork, tucked into crisp, HOA-branded envelopes with Celeste's signature in perfect blue ink. The total had already surpassed $1,000. Ethan didn't pay them. Instead, he submitted an application to the architectural committee. Photos, measurements, city permits. Even a letter from Lily's pediatrician noting the therapeutic benefit of warm water hydrotherapy for anxiety. It was a long shot, but it was polite, measured, reasonable. Celeste rejected it in less than 24 hours. The tub's placement, visual disruption, and failure to follow the submission process nullify retroactive consideration. He read her words in the kitchen while Lily stirred honey into her tea, oblivious to the bureaucracy forming storm clouds over their little backyard piece. That night, Ethan sat alone in the tub, steam curling around his face. He looked up at the pines, their branches barely moving, and thought, "She doesn't care about rules. She cares about control." And that realization felt dangerous. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan had driven into town to meet with a former colleague. Lily was at school. The house was empty for 3 hours. When he returned, he noticed it immediately. Boot prints in the backyard dirt, the latch on the side gate left open. A fresh, yellow tag taped to the hot tub cover. Under review, do not use. And then he saw the camera. He pulled the footage, Celeste, with 2 other HOA board members, entering his yard without permission, walking directly to the hot tub, measuring tape in hand. One of them took photos. Celeste examined the water, like a health inspector sniffing for disease. She wasn't just escalating. She was staking a claim. Ethan's jaw clenched as the screen paused on her face, tilted slightly in disgust, the look of someone absolutely sure she was untouchable. He filed a formal complaint with the city. Trespassing, unauthorized property access, harassment. He didn't stop there. He printed copies of the footage and quietly slid them into the mailboxes of every home on the block, along with a single typed letter. If she can do it to me, she can do it to you. By Friday, word had spread like wildfire. An elderly couple 2 doors down told Ethan that Celeste had once fined them $300 for a seasonal wreath she claimed was culturally ambiguous. A single mom across the street said Celeste forced her to remove her daughter's tree swing. Another neighbor admitted to moving out after Celeste cited them for improperly stored garden tools. For years, everyone had put up with it because it was easier. Ethan wasn't looking for a fight. But now that one had landed in his backyard, he wasn't going to run from it. He began documenting everything. Fines, letters, board meeting notes. A folder thickened day by day, filled with screenshots, bylaws, permit records, and the city's own official acknowledgement that his hot tub was legally compliant. He didn't post online, didn't yell, didn't knock on doors. He waited. Because he knew something Celeste didn't. A storm doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly. And then it hits. The community center hadn't been this full in years. Folding chairs lined the walls. Neighbors stood in clusters near the coffee urns, whispering in low tones. A few clutched printed copies of the flyer Ethan had slipped into their mailboxes a week earlier. Across the top, "Know your rights. Know who's watching." The HOA board meeting was supposed to be routine. It never was. Celeste Warrington stood at the front of the room, as she always did, back straight, blouse pressed, binder in hand. Her voice was calm but cold as she reviewed monthly violations. Untrimmed hedges, overhanging bird feeders, a lawn gnome incident. Until she reached Ethan's name. Lot 17B, she said, flipping a page. Continued refusal to comply with structure code. Recommended next action. Enforced removal. That's when Ethan stood. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He just walked to the center aisle, nodded once toward Celeste, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'd like to request the floor." Celeste frowned. "This isn't a public hearing, but it is a public board," Ethan replied. "And what I'm about to share concerns everyone here." There was a murmur. Someone clapped softly. Ethan turned to face the room, holding up a small remote. "A month ago, my daughter and I installed a legally permitted hot tub in our backyard. Since then, I've received over $2,000 in fines. had my application rejected without cause, and experienced unauthorized entry onto my private property. He clicked the remote. The projector behind Celeste flickered on. Footage rolled. Celeste, in Ethan's yard, measuring tape in hand. A yellow notice. No knock. No permission. Gasps filled the room. This occurred during school hours, while no one was home, without warrant or notification. That's trespassing under Oregon Code 164.245. Celeste's mouth opened, then closed. Ethan didn't stop. Ethan. Since then, I've gathered statements from 11 households. He raised a folder, detailing similar incidents over the past 5 years. Fines for harmless decor. Entry without notice. Intimidation disguised as enforcement. He handed the folder to a board member. In addition, I have a letter from the city confirming that my hot tub meets all local safety and zoning ordinances. The only thing standing between my family and peace is a rule change passed by a board majority without community vote. Someone shouted from the back, "You never gave us a chance to vote." Another voice, "She fined me for hanging string lights on my patio." Then Margaret Hale, Ethan's late wife's mother, stood, steady despite her cane. "I helped write the original HOA charter for this neighborhood," she said, voice unwavering. "It was meant to preserve beauty, not punish grief. What we've become under Celeste, that was never the goal." The room fell quiet, until Phil Dawson, retired military, Lot 9A, stood up and said what everyone else was thinking. "I move for a vote of no confidence in Celeste Warrington as HOA president." "I second," came a voice. Then another, then 10 more. Celeste's eyes widened. "You can't. There are procedures, but she was wrong." But she was, because the very bylaws she loved to quote had a section she'd forgotten. Any board member may be removed by 2/3 vote of homeowners present at an official meeting. And tonight, the room was full. The vote passed. Unanimously. After the meeting, Celeste gathered her binder in silence and walked out. No one stopped her. No one applauded. She vanished into the night like a shadow, finally chased from the porch light. The board appointed an interim president. Ethan declined a seat, but offered to help redraft the community guidelines, with input from real residents. That weekend, for the first time since the day of installation, Ethan and Lily climbed into the hot tub without anxiety. No fines, no eyes watching through fences, just warm water, the scent of cedar, and a girl laughing again. "You kept it, Daddy," Lily whispered, leaning against his arm. "I didn't keep it, sweetheart," Ethan said. "We earned it." They sat in silence as the moon rose over a town that finally remembered who it belonged to.